Today, we are going to take a journey back into the beginning of the Charlie Kirk case. Let me remind you, in the beginning of the Charlie Kirk case, we were talking about a deal Charlie refused. I've done a video on this. I called it Art of the Deal. And in that video, I broke down Brad Parscale and his Clock Tower X filing. And Danks has recently talked about this and blown this wide open as well. What I want to get into is the bigger story, and it's about that deal Candace kept saying he refused, and Netanyahu called Charlie in the Hamptons, if you guys remember. This theme has not came back up in a long time, and I want to revisit it because I still believe the deal Charlie refused is in the filings. I believe this is part of the propaganda that Israel is trying to shill to us as we speak. So today we're going to talk about the deal Charlie refused. So let's get into it. Candace Owens said Charlie Kirk refused that deal. In my opinion, nobody has figured out what that deal was. But what we do know is 8 days after Charlie Kirk was killed, a $6 million foreign agent contract was filed with the DOJ. That's that Clock Tower X filing. It's basically executes his private letter to Netanyahu almost point for point. Once again, I can't 100% prove they're connected, but reminder, Charlie Kirk knew Brad Parscale, and he also knew that this deal could have been offered to Salem Media. He would have known that. He would have been in these circles, right? So, who was Charlie Kirk in this network? This is important to think about. He built Turning Point USA into the largest conservative campus organization in the country. His show ran on Salem Media Group, the same network we're going to get into and we already have talked about. And by his own words, over 90% of TPUSA's earliest major donors came through David Horowitz events. David Horowitz was one of the most prominent pro-Israel voices in conservative politics. So Charlie's donor base from day one ran directly through the pro-Israel establishment. That means when Charlie started pushing back, even privately, it wasn't some outsider making noise. It was someone they had built, they had propped up. I always talk about it is a mafia. You cannot leave this mafia alive. So it was someone they propped up, and they also needed him. They needed him to still keep the youth vote and the youth voice and to put out propaganda, things like that. So he wasn't just a commentator. He was the most watched pro-Israel voice on American college campuses. If he changed his position publicly, it would have landed differently than anyone else changing theirs. That's the leverage here. That's why a deal would have been on the table. So, on May 2nd, 2025, Charlie wrote a private 7-page letter directly to Netanyahu. And like I said, we're going back in time. Candace Owens referenced this letter in the very beginning, and she wanted this letter public. This letter was later published by the New York Post after Charlie's death. And what it said was essentially this: Israel, you are losing America, not just liberals, conservatives, MAGA, and his own audience on campus. Half the questions he was getting at Turning Point events were about Israel, and all of them were negative. He said that he was defending Netanyahu in public more than your own government is. So, defending the pro-Israel cause, and he was tired of it. This is what Charlie said. In my opinion, Israel is going to lose the information war, and we know Netanyahu has came out and said it's an information war after this comment, and needs a communication intervention. So this was May 2nd, 2025. Israel is getting crushed on social media, and you are losing younger generations of Americans, even among MAGA conservatives. This should be a 5-alarm fire. And then he laid out exactly how to do it. 7 specific recommendations, a rapid response social media team, an Israel Truth Network to debunk narratives in real time, a Gen Z TikTok strategy, which now we know Larry Ellison has bought up TikTok. It's not just to convince Gen Z. No, Larry Ellison, a pro-Israel donor, has bought a portion of TikTok, big majority. And then he also talked about evangelical outreach, influencer campaigns, and a direct effort to shape how AI platforms talk about Israel. So Charlie Kirk said all of this. And we are going to come back to this list because this is very important. Now, Candace Owens said publicly she had inside information that Charlie was offered a deal by the government of Israel, a deal that would have taken him and TPUSA to a completely different level, a lot of money, and that Charlie said no, he refused it. She said, and I'm quoting her, he said no to Bibi, meaning Netanyahu. So what's proven? Charlie wrote the letter. Charlie was under documented escalating donor pressure. Verified texts show he told a group message he was considering stepping back from the pro-Israel cause. confirmed by Andrew Colvett on the Charlie Kirk show itself. Not proven. So this is speculation. Whether the deal Candace described is directly connected to what became of Project 545. We are showing you the sequence. You can draw your own conclusion. On September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated at Utah Valley University, and he was 31 years old. So let's talk about the sequence. November 2024, Project 545 budget was approved. So that was approved for 545 million shekels and calls it consciousness warfare. So this was at least budgeted out before Charlie Kirk's letter. So that's something to think about. And they wanted to use this for international public diplomacy. They said it was for Israel's previous annual Hasbara budget. That word is always so interesting to me, side note. Okay, next on the timeline here. January 8th, Brad Parscale was placed inside Salem Media. Trump's 2016 digital director, the man who built the Cambridge Analytical micro-targeting machine, is named Chief Strategy Officer of Salem Media Group. Salem hosts the Charlie Kirk Show, Dinesh D'Souza, Laura Trump, and dozens of other flagship conservative programs. For example, Dennis Prager, which Charlie Kirk loved Dennis. On May 2nd, Charlie writes his letter to Netanyahu. He's warning Israel that they're losing America. He provides a 7-point blueprint. He says he doesn't want to keep their spokesperson on campus, and he puts his private number at the bottom. So that's directly to the Prime Minister of Israel. So from May to August of 2025, there was pressure on Charlie. So the verified text showed Charlie telling a group message he will have to leave the pro-Israel cause. There was donor tension documented. Multiple sources have came forward, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, to corroborate this pressure. We know Harrison came through and said that Charlie Kirk thought he would be eliminated if he was not still on the pro-Israel side. And then, shockingly, a month after that text or that tweet came out, and it was directed actually at Ian Carroll. A lot of people forget that, but Ian Carroll was calling out Charlie Kirk, and Harrison stuck up for Kirk and said he heard from private sources that Charlie Kirk was facing too much pressure, basically, and he was worried he'd be taken down. Then September 10th, that horrible day, Charlie Kirk was taken out at Utah Valley University. He was only 31. So then this is where the timeline gets even more wild. On September 18th, only 8 days after Charlie's death, Brad Parscale's firm, Clocktower X LLC, registers as a foreign agent of the Israeli government. It was a $6 million contract. I know there's a lot more hidden money there too. We're just going to focus on big picture. Netanyahu publicly invokes Charlie's letter for the first time on this exact same day. So that's just a coinkydink that I thought we should mention. And then from September 26th to the 27th, the Esther Project FARA was filed. So 14 to 18 undisclosed American influencers contracted to post pro-Israel content at $7,000 per post. So we see that all the time, 7,000 shekels. People joke about that. But none register as required under FARA. Then September 27th, Show Face by Works FARA was filed. So $4.1 million it was given and allotted to the budget for evangelical church geofencing campaigns, targeting mobile devices inside churches during Sunday worship in 4 states. That may have expanded since then. So what is Project 545? So now that you have the context, let me tell you what Project 545 actually is, because this is bigger than one company and one contract. Project 545 is a $145 million Israeli government influence operation running inside the United States right now. It is named after the 545 million shekels allocated for it. It has 3 separate arms, all flowing through the same German company, Havas Media Group, on behalf of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So foreign influence into America. The man coordinating it on the Israeli side is Aaron Shoyevich. He's the chief of staff at Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So Brad Parscale has direct contact to the chief of staff at Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Can you imagine? So let's put it all together, man. So here's the full picture. There's the Clocktower X LLC, ran by Brad Parscale. This is the digital saturation arm. So he was a former Trump campaign manager and Cambridge Analytica architect. He's now Salem Media's chief strategy officer. He runs this contract. So the contract requires 5,100 pieces of pro-Israel content per month, 80% aimed at Gen Z on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and podcasts. Minimum 50 million impressions per month. messaging embedded directly into Salem Media's conservative programming. So Brad Parscale owns this company and he's funneling it into Salem Media. And the most explosive clause, a contractual requirement to actively reshape how ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Grok, and Claude respond to Israel-related questions. That is in the filing. You can read it. So what that tells me is that your systems are now Israel pro. So it's pro-Israel bias. I said that backwards. Whoops, words. So anytime you're researching something, also take that with a grain of salt. Everything now has a bias because, mind you, this was filed in September. We are in April. Arm 2, the Bridge Partners and the Esther project. So this is that covert influencer arm we've seen on X referenced a lot. So 14 to 18 American social media creators whose names are not publicly known are paid approximately $7,000 per post to promote Israel on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. They are posting as if it is their own opinion. It is a paid foreign government contract. None of them have filed under FARA, and they are legally required to file. So the firm is owned by Earl Steinberg, a former Israeli government official, and Yair Levy. So people are watching these and not even necessarily knowing if that's their true opinion or if they're being paid. And finally, Show Faith by Works. Danks has done a lot of really good work on this one. So I recommend you checking his out. We're just going to breeze over it, but this is the evangelical church arm. So the Republican consultant Chad Schnitger, California chapter president of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, is paid $150,000 to run this operation. The plan is to geofence every major church in California. And you can geofence using the superfeed technologies we've talked about, right? So they're supposed to geofence every major church in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado during Sunday worship. They capture device IDs when their phones enter the church boundary. They retarget those phones with pro-Israel, anti-Palestinian ads anywhere they go afterwards. A mobile trailer called the October 7th Experience tours the Christian colleges, and the filing calls this the largest Christian church geofencing campaign in U.S. history. So just imagine you're going to church, you just want to hear about the Lord, and your phone is infiltrated. That's how this works. If you show up to your church and if you want to see if your church is on that list, go to americansfortransparency.org. Danks made that. It will tell you the church that is being geofenced. So I highly recommend checking out his website for that because it will tell you if you're going to church at a geofence location. I am personally not. I have already checked. You should check. So let's talk about how this money moves through the Havas pipeline. So it goes through the Israeli, I'm going to show you a picture if it will work. Okay. So it goes through the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then it goes through LAPAM, which is Israel's ad bureau. Then it goes through Havas Media Germany, which is an international conduit. So look at all of these. See, anything that's done secretly like this, it's sketchy. Like, let's just be honest. You shouldn't have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4 different avenues, and then they contract to other people to give a media message, right? And they still had to register in FARA, but then other contractors didn't, right? So it makes it so convoluted and very hard for people to actually understand what's going on. I like this visual. I think it's super interesting. So anyway, it goes through Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It goes through the LAPAM government ad agency. It goes through Havas Media Germany. Then it goes through U.S. contractor, the Clock Tower, Esther, and Show Faith by Works. So the total disclosed is $11 million. There's a total budget of $145 million. So what you can see in these public FARA filings is approximately 7% of the operation. And I think Danks has even went into more. He's found more money. He has a lot of really good videos on this, but I'm trying to give this overhead view. I highly recommend checking out his work on this as well. So we're just putting the pieces together and then relating it back to the Art of the Deal episode I talked about. So let's talk about Charlie's letter versus what was built. Now, here's the part I need you to sit with because this is what made me go, wait, this is too much. Charlie's letter had 7 recommendations, and then we're going to look at what was built. So Charlie's letter, he said a rapid response social media team. Now we have Clock Tower X, so 5,100 pieces a month. Kirk's letter, Israel Truth Network. They needed real-time debunking. Now there's a site, allyvia.com plus allies for peace, built by Clock Tower X. Kirk's letter, a Gen Z TikTok YouTube overhaul. Now there's the 80% of Clock Tower content targeting Gen Z on exactly those platforms, 50 million impressions per month minimum. So that's what they've guaranteed to the state of Israel, basically. So that's their targets. And Larry Ellison bought it up, baby. So we've got even more on that, right? Okay, what else did Charlie recommend? An evangelical outreach. Now we know there's show of faith by works with 4.1 million in church geofencing. He also recommended using influencers and fresh faces, not tired spokespeople. He was getting tired of talking about it. Well, now we have the Esther Project. 14 to 18 undisclosed influencers at 7,000 per post. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more, but this is what we can find. And then he said to stop relying on American advocates, build Israel's own independent voices. So that's the Salem media integration, Israeli messaging embedded in programming, reaching 80 million Americans monthly. And then reshape AI platform outputs on Israel. So Kirk recommended doing this. Now the contract clause explicitly naming ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, Gemini as targets for narrative reshaping, also in Clock Tower's deal. So Israel has publicly confirmed it implemented Kirk's recommendations. The Jerusalem Post reported in December 2025 that the government's communications overhaul directly mirrored the letter. The unified spokesperson, fact site, hostage speaking tours, all of those things. So what Charlie's letter, the document that shaped Project 545's American strategy? Or did he and Israel independently arrive at the exact same 7-point plan targeting the exact same platforms at the exact same moment? I'm not telling you what to conclude. I'm just showing you the patterns. The pattern here, like Charlie Kirk would say, my pattern recognition is high. I noticed this back in October that things were weird. I realized that whatever deal that Theo Vaughn and Tucker were talking about on Theo's podcast, my gosh, that had to be something to do with Charlie Kirk. I don't know why. And then I did the episode, The Art of the Deal. Well, we're coming back to this because now Project 545 is literally Charlie Kirk's letter, basically, in my opinion. So they had this budget already set, but they didn't have a plan, it didn't seem like, until Charlie Kirk's letter came up and said, ding, 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 here's your plan. And they executed and they went harder. So what we still don't know, we don't know when the Project 545 contracts were first negotiated, before or after Charlie's death. We don't know if the deal Candace describes is the same deal that became Clock Tower X, or this Project 545, where it all comes together. Were they going to give it all to TPUSA, right? Because TPUSA probably could have handled all of this with the superfeed technology they were using, things like that. So things to consider. We don't know who the Esther Project influencers are. You can probably take a guess on X if you look around. And we don't know what the other 93% of the 145 million operation is doing that hasn't showed up in FARA filings. So that's something to be aware of. We don't know why the Charlie Kirk show is still running under Salem. Whose CSO is a registered foreign agent for the government Charlie Kirk was pushing back against? These are the open questions. I'm going to keep looking into it. I will bring you what I find and think this deal did go through. Maybe it wasn't the exact deal Charlie said no to. Maybe it was parsed out, but it looks remarkably like the blueprint he wrote, filed with the Department of Justice 8 days after he died, with his name in Netanyahu's mouth on the same morning. I can't prove these things are 100% connected, but I can prove the timeline, and I think the timeline deserves to be seen. Like and subscribe, drop your questions in the comments. I genuinely read them and they shape what I dig into next. I hope you guys have a great day and a wonderful week. Bye, y'all.